Thanks for joining us for CBN News Today. I'm Charlene Aaron.
And I'm Ephraim Graham. President Obama addresses the nation tonight, making his case for an aggressive action against the ISIS terrorist group. His primetime speech comes on the eve of the 13th anniversary of the 9/11 terrorist attacks on our nation. The White House says the president wants congressional support for his plan, but he doesn't need it to move forward. President Obama says he has a strategy to degrade and defeat ISIS, and he's now making his pitch to the American people.
This is an important opportunity for the president to communicate a very important message about our priorities and our national security to the American public.
The president's plan is expected to call for Congress to sign off on a program to arm and train Syrian rebels to take the fight directly to the militant group on the ground, and increasing U.S. airstrikes against ISIS in Iraq, possibly expanding them into Syria. And he won't have to convince the American people about the need to take more aggressive action. The latest Washington Post ABC News survey shows 71% supporting airstrikes in Iraq and 65% wanting to see airstrikes in Syria. The president already outlined his plan for a broader military effort to congressional leaders inside the Oval Office Tuesday. But the White House tells congressional leaders of both parties he doesn't need their authorization to take the actions he's planning. Senator Mitch McConnell was in that meeting.
The view of myself and most of my members is the president should be seeking congressional approval, period, for whatever he decides to do.
The president does have support in Congress, but critics still question why it's taken him so long to react to the threat from ISIS, which is now trying to recruit young women using social media. On the eve of the anniversary of the 9/11 terror attacks on the United States, an NBC News poll shows 47% believe America is less safe now than before September 11th. Meanwhile, U.S. and Mideast Christian leaders are urging the president to start addressing the plight of religious minorities targeted by ISIS. Robert George, on the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, said Americans should demand action so the Middle East persecuted Christians know they haven't been abandoned.
A Catholic scholar says President Obama can't ignore ISIS's religious appeal as he works on a strategy to combat the terrorist group. Law professor Robert Destro from Catholic University of America says the Obama administration was blindsided by ISIS because CIA analysts don't pay attention to religion. Destro says the Islamic State group is engaged in a fight for the soul of Islam, as well as for territory in which to establish a caliphate.
Australia may elevate its terrorism threat to the second highest level in a matter of days. The announcement was made by the nation's spy chief because of the growing danger posed by the Islamic State supporters. After that announcement, Australian police confirmed they have charged 2 men with offenses related to engaging in hostile activities in Syria and recruiting people for the same purposes. Both suspects were linked to the Iraq Islamic Center in Logan, which has been linked to jihadists in the media. An estimated 60 Australian citizens are fighting for ISIS, and another 15 Australian fighters have been killed, including 2 young suicide bombers.
2 weeks into the ceasefire with Hamas, Israel faces another threat from the north. CBN News' Chris Mitchell reports from the strategic Golan Heights on the Syria-Israel border.
In late August, an Islamic group with ties to al-Qaeda scored big gains against the Syrian army. The fighting took place on Israel's northern doorstep. This is an observation point overlooking the Israeli-Syrian border. We've been hearing explosions in the background and seeing plumes of smoke, presumably fighting between al-Nusra forces and the Assad regime. One of the most important victories al-Nusra has won recently is taking over the strategic Quneitra crossing about a mile behind me. For years, that served as the only portal between Israel and Syria.
Look at this. There's a big mushroom there now. You see it? So the war is going on there all the time.
Arik Golansky manages a restaurant close to the border. It's in Kibbutz Marom Golan with horses and guest houses. Now there's a new terrorist neighbor.
Al-Nusra control now 80% of the whole region of Quneitra. It's not just here, but it's also the city, the villages.
The Golan Heights sits along Israel's northern border with Syria. Israel won the land in the 1967 Six-Day War, And for 40 years, it's been Israel's quietest border. Now, UN observers monitor the fighting from the heights. Recently, al-Nusra captured 45 peacekeepers. Al-Nusra is on Israel's border now, but Golansky says ISIS is not far behind.
They are more towards to the south of the Golan, and most of them are between Syria and Lebanon.
Despite the fighting nearby, life for Israelis in the Golan Heights goes on. Lilak Ashtar serves as a community liaison with the IDF.
We live a very peaceful life, but we know that a few kilometers away there is a war.
Israel will be ready. The border will be ready. The question is if the whole world is ready for this change of the Islam movement.
Being ready is why 2 U.S. pastors brought their tour group to the border.
Just to pray for the peace of Jerusalem, pray for the peace of the nation Israel, and that we need to support them and stand with them.
The proximity of that push so close to the border here of Israel is a concern for all of us, and was certainly for the people here of Israel and the land of Israel, but for the world.
Israel sits on the front lines, but the memory of 9/11 shows radical Islam knows no boundaries. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, on the Israeli-Syrian border.
The Ebola outbreak continues to spread throughout West Africa, and Liberian leaders say the epidemic now threatens the very existence of their country.
We are meeting at a time when Liberia is facing a serious threat to national existence. The deadly Ebola virus has caused a disruption of the normal functioning of our state. It is now spreading like wildfire, devouring everything in its path.
The UN envoy for Liberia warns the deadly virus has political, economic, and social implications in the country. And the World Health Organization has warned thousands more cases could occur in Liberia, which has been hit hardest. Health officials say the number of Ebola cases is actually significantly higher than what is actually being reported.
I can't say enough about just how grave this is, just how deep the needs are, and just how great the challenge is going to be. What we mustn't forget is that there are other crises lurking in the shadow of Ebola. The regular health system has collapsed, bringing the potential for other health problems in its wake.
Some 2,288 people have died from Ebola in Liberia, Guinea, and Sierra Leone.
Lawmakers are probing a government program that gives military-grade equipment to police departments across the nation. A Senate hearing called into question why local authorities need armored vehicles, automatic weapons, and camouflage uniforms to police their communities. All this comes in the wake of the violent confrontations between police and protesters in Ferguson, Missouri, after an unarmed black man was shot and killed by police. Missouri Senator Claire McCaskill said police military-style response caused alarm.
I think most Americans were uncomfortable watching a suburban street in St. Louis being transformed with vivid images, powerful images across this country into a war zone, complete with camouflage, tear gas, rubber bullets, armored vehicles, and laser sights on assault weapons.
More than $5.1 billion worth of military equipment has been distributed to local police since the Pentagon authorized the program in 1990. It's intended to help cities and towns fight the drug war and respond to terrorist attacks. Senator Rand Paul said police departments are increasingly using the sophisticated, intimidating equipment for crowd control. McCaskill said that's unnecessary and a threat to freedom of speech and assembly.
Indiana and Wisconsin have separately requested the U.S. Supreme Court decide on whether gay marriage should be legal in all 50 states. The attorneys general from the states cited the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals ruling declaring their state's bans on gay marriage unconstitutional. Officials from both of the states say it is an opportunity for the High Court to settle the national debate once and for all.
Right now, you've got some lower federal courts saying that it's a denial of equal protection of law to not allow gay marriage, and other lower federal courts are saying, no, that's not a constitutional violation. The Supreme Court doesn't usually like to let a situation go on very long where the Constitution means different things in Utah than in Massachusetts.
A Supreme Court decision to get involved in the issue of gay marriage could come as soon as the end of this month, but a final ruling isn't likely before June 2015.
Coming up, shocking violence at churches across the country. Learn how to protect yourself and your church. Coming up.
A grand jury has indicted a man accused of killing 7 people at a small Christian college in California. 45-year-old Juan Go was indicted for the shooting rampage at Oikos University in Oakland in 2012. A judge ruled last year Go is not mentally fit to stand trial after doctors diagnosed him with paranoid schizophrenia. But the indictment means Go can face trial if he's found competent. The former Oikos student had pleaded not guilty. Authorities say Go planned the attacks after a dispute with the school.
Well, it's the one place in America you'd think you'd be safe, a church. But sadly, that isn't always true.
Indeed, it's not. Violent attacks and even deaths on church property occur far more often than people realize. The good news, you can protect yourself. Mark Martin talked with a security expert who helps churches keep their congregations safe.
This is 911. This is Sue. Where's your emergency? There's a shooting at New Life. Church.
One of the most publicized acts of violence at a church happened in Colorado Springs in 2007. 24-year-old Matthew Murray opened fire in the parking lot of New Life Church after the 11 a.m. service. Murray struggled with mental disorders and became angry at Christians and bitter after being denied a chance to go on a missions trip. He took the lives of teenage sisters Stephanie and Rachel Works and injured their father and 2 other parishioners before encountering a church member inside the building who was a volunteer security guard. Saying God guided her and protected her, Jean Assam heroically faced the heavily armed Murray and shot him with her personal concealed weapon. He then took his own life. Incidents like this have church security expert Jimmy Meeks sounding the alarm.
We're up to at least 473 confirmed violent deaths on church and faith-based property since 1999. And that number is equal to or maybe slightly ahead of the number of violent deaths that occur at schools that we hear about what seems like weekly.
An ordained minister since 1973 and a police officer for more than 33 years, Meeks wants churches and faith-based organizations to become aware of the violence and learn how to protect their congregations. He crisscrosses the country, helping lead what are called sheepdog seminars for churches. Meeks says there are 3 types of people: sheep, wolves, and sheepdogs. Simply put, sheepdogs protect the flock from wolves.
The main thing we tell churches, Mark, is that it's easy to know what to do if you can get beyond being blind about what's happening. 2013, we had a death in a church and faith-based property every 8 days, and every 2.5 days, a violent incident occurring on church and faith-based property.
Well, what is the most common type of violence in a church?
The most common one we see is probably domestic violence. A man is mad at his wife. A church in Louisiana a couple of years ago, he simply went to the church, he pulled her out in the parking lot and shot her dead. We see that a lot. These guys get angry and they just don't care where their wife is. So churches need to be aware if you're having domestic violence in your church, and you do have it somewhere. You know, church people do good at covering things up sometimes. You need to be aware of these things, and you just need to be ready. You need to be prepared.
The sheepdog seminars for churches are designed to help congregations and faith-based groups be prepared. Meeks and other experts appeal to churches to form what are called eyes and ears teams. The teams are made up of men and women whose assignment on a given day is to watch out for anyone and anything that would try to harm a congregation. Seminar leaders also advocate the use of spiritual weapons like fasting and prayer. They say the idea of protecting churchgoers is biblical, citing among other scriptures Nehemiah 4:9, which says, "We prayed to our God and posted a guard." Mark Martin, CBN News.
Up next, meet Deanna. She has ALS and it could kill her in 3 to 5 years. Hear how her treatment developed by her dad is showing some amazing results right after this.
Apple has unveiled new iPhone products out for release on September 19th. The iPhone is going big and expanding its reach with bigger screens and a new mobile payment system. But one of the biggest surprises of the evening, the Apple Watch with health monitoring capabilities.
Because you wear it, we invented new, intimate ways to connect and communicate directly from your wrist. And it's also a comprehensive health and fitness device.
The device can use what it learns about the wearer over the time to suggest personalized daily fitness goals. The watch is the first new Apple product in 4 years.
Well, it's been said that sitting is the new smoking because too much sitting can lead to serious health problems like poor circulation and chronic diseases. But a new study says there's a simple solution for people who sit much of the day. Just take a 5-minute walk every hour. Researchers at Indiana University say those walks can reverse the problems with poor circulation that can be caused by sitting too long. And you don't have to walk really fast either. Just a nice leisurely stroll will do the job.
Well, it is a brutal, wasting disease that slowly robs the life of its victims. ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease. Patients lose their ability to walk, talk, eat, and eventually even their ability to breathe.
Well, this summer, people around the world donated millions of dollars to stomp out this killer disease through the Ice Bucket Challenge. And now Laura Johnson brings us hope for ALS victims through a new treatment that's gaining ground.
I know, you can do that easy.
Deanna Tadone was a beautiful bride and a recent law school graduate when her doctor told her she didn't have long to live.
And he said, "You have ALS." And at that moment, I felt like I left my body.
Deanna's father, an orthopedic surgeon, was shocked by what little help was available.
We took her to all the various citadels that specialize in ALS. And to my chagrin, there was nothing that could be done for her.
Unable to accept defeat, Dr. Tadone devoted himself to developing a treatment to help his daughter.
I call myself the resident guinea pig.
Finally, one worked, meaning it significantly slowed the progression of Deanna's ALS. He calls it the Deanna Protocol. It consists of supplements like AKG.
So we put her on the AKG, and then we ran out of it. Within one day, her tremors became unbelievable. Okay. Put her back on it, got some more, put her back on it, the tremors subsided.
Dr. Tadone chronicled his daughter's success online. Soon dozens of other people with ALS tried the Deanna Protocol and experienced similar results. People like Anthony Topazzi, the former president of the Mississippi Power Company.
6 months ago, I had a problem with excess saliva. I don't have that problem today. My voice is better than it was. It's not perfect, but it's better than it was. I couldn't drink water or take a pill without feeling like I was going to choke to death. Today I'm taking probably 30 pills a day. I don't even think about it. I could only eat soft food 6 months ago. I'm eating steak, ribs, anything I want today.
Of the people who tried the Deanna Protocol, 75% report it slowed the progression of their ALS and reduced symptoms such as twitching and difficulty walking. Interest in the Deanna Protocol led researchers at the University of South Florida to study its effects on mice with ALS.
It's important to recognize that the animal model that we use is very aggressive and is probably significantly more aggressive than the human form of ALS.
The mice on the Deanna Protocol had improved neurological scores, increased motor function, and most importantly, survived longer than the mice who weren't.
I think it's pretty remarkable that, there's hundreds of drugs and, experimental compounds that are being screened with this animal model. And relative to what's out there, I think this is proven to be probably the most effective thing out there that's readily available to the general public and to ALS patients.
Results of the Deanna Protocol mouse study were published in 2 leading medical journals.
To me, it's a very important finding, and I think doctors, neurologists need to acknowledge the results of this study and the feedback from patients, and I think they should recommend it as a therapeutic option for their patients.
So while a cure for ALS appears to be a long way off, some patients are at least able to slow the progression of the disease with the Deanna Protocol. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
You can find out more about the Deanna Protocol by going to cbnnews.com. Finally today, it's being called the lamest college in Iowa.
And school officials say that's actually a good thing. Dordt College is located in Sioux Center, Iowa. A sorority website just gave the school its lamest label. But this small Christian college is happy they are not known as the party school. They'd rather focus on helping students find God's plan for their lives.
Kind of the attitude that college is about partying, and that's not what Dordt College is about. It's about learning. It's about preparing to take your place in God's world. It's about being part of a Christian community and being able to go out and use the skills in whatever area you've been called to work.
Now, as for students inside the school, they say they have plenty of fun, from activities, clubs, and sports to just hanging out with their friends.
Actually, we're having a slip and slide, which will be really fun.
There's a lot of different areas you can just hang out. We like to talk with friends, chill out. And then there's some things to do in town too, like local cafes are pretty fun.
The website for Dordt College says their goal is to offer a biblical, Christ-centered education. And Jesus is not lame.
Amen. Amen. I guess a lot of people will probably now check it out.
You got it.
Didn't know about it. That's it for CBN News today. You can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about at cbnnews.com.
We want to hear what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can do it on Facebook or at CBN News on Twitter. Certainly hope you'll join us again right here next time. It's Wednesday. Make it a wonderful one.